Hi, I'm Tim Henriques with the Fantasy Book Ranking System, and in today's series we're going to cover, everybody wants it, right? Everybody's been asking for it, so here it is. We are ready to review The Game of Thrones, or if you want to go more fancy, The Song of Ice and Fire. And so this is by George R.R. Martin, obviously super popular. There's an HBO show going on. I should put a caveat that I'm reviewing the first 3 books. Several other books have come out. The series is not yet complete, but this is going to be a review of the first 3 books. I felt like all 3 books were pretty similar. First one maybe just the tiniest bit the best, but I still think that they're similar enough where we can review all 3, so that's what we're going off of for this review. Should also let you know that most of these books I did read a while ago. I was actually read the Game of Thrones books before they kind of became popular, and so kind of read that first one, decade or so ago. And I do also watch the series, and I am a pretty big fan of the HBO series. I try to keep this thing separate, but that does affect a little bit things like memorability and stuff just because you're seeing it in other formats. Alright, so we're going to hit Game of Thrones, and let's see what we got. First, just in case you're not familiar with this review system, basically the purpose here is to help you, the reader, decide if you want to invest your time into reading a book like this. You can read Amazon reviews, but it's very difficult to know if you even like what the other person likes. There's no kind of point of reference. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rank books 1 to 10 and then compare it to books that you've already read, hopefully, that you can then say, oh, I like that or don't, or you can agree or disagree. I'm also going to do this just as a little bit selfish. I'm trying to write my own fantasy series, and I want to understand what makes great fantasy works kind of tick, and what could be flaws in them, so I wanted to get a better understanding of that. So again, we'll go through 15 different ranking systems, usually a scale of 1 to 10. 10 is awesome, 8 is pretty solid, 6 kind of sucks. Usually the books get a little higher scores because I pre-screen and review before I read them just to make sure I'm not wasting my time. I'll also go over some other elements just as a description, and then we'll go over flaws, strengths, and then I'll give you my overall impression, and I'll give you that book's unique FaBR score. So first, how epic is the story? Well, Game of Thrones is pretty damn epic. You got a lot of different lands, a lot of characters, sweeping changes. The challenges impact everything, and so this actually is the litmus test for other things to be compared to. Star Wars and Lord of the Rings would also get a 10, but Game of Thrones is a solid 10. So pretty badass, epic story covering lots of characters. I personally think George R.R. Martin has a fantastic writing style, certainly something I'm envious of myself, and so this would also get a 10. Name of the Wind is pretty phenomenal as well, so they're both masters of their craft, but this gets a 10. How real does it feel? I think this feels really real. Like you can kind of visualize that you're there with the different characters, you're doing different things. Obviously it is fantasy, but it has that kind of fantasy taking place in real life feel. Not quite as nitty gritty as the First Law trilogy, which also is a 10, but still this gets super high marks. What lessons are taught? I think there are lessons embedded in his writing, and so I'm going to give that a 9, pretty high score as well. Something like a Star Wars gets a 10. Is the book a page turner? Yeah. I mean, when I first read this, I was on vacation. I was supposed to go out and go swimming and hang out and go fishing, but I found this book and just cold myself up and just kept reading, because that's how I wanted to spend my time. So definitely a page turner. It's about as high as it gets for fantasy novels. How memorable is the story? Well, I think it's very memorable. You got memorable characters, you got memorable things going on. It's so complex, it can occasionally be confusing. Again, I have to admit that watching the show has helped a little bit with that and made it more memorable. Just like if you only watch Star Wars once, how memorable would it be? But still, it's pretty memorable. So it's a 9 out of 10, high level there. The main characters, there are some super cool main characters. There's a lot of them. You can remember them. They're very unique. They're distinct. So this is another strength, a 9 here for your main character. Something like Conan, that super classic archetype, would get a 10. The secondary characters, there's tons of super cool secondary characters. Probably somebody you're just going to think is super awesome no matter who you are. So this book is pretty badass. Star Wars would be a 10 with all of its cool characters, but this book's right up there with a 9.5 for secondary characters. You definitely want to read the next book, at least me. What's going on, right? Oh my god, I got to figure out what's happening, get attached to the characters. So this is a high 10. I want to read that next book. How rereadable is it? I think due to his super cool writing, his intricate stories, kind of seeing what's going to come, he lays hints and things like that. I have not reread these books, so I should be clear, but I do think that you could definitely do that and it would be worth your time, and these books are very rereadable, so I would give that a 10 as of now. How clear is the good and evil? It's not perfectly clear. It's not Star Wars clear, but it's pretty clear. There's reasonably clear actions that people are going to take. Gets a little murky, I think, as the series continues. But still, there is good and evil, in my opinion, in this book. How prevalent is the magic? That's on the lower side. So something like a King Arthur kind of style. There's definitely some magic in there. It is fantasy, but it's not super prevalent. Both the main characters, a lot of the main characters cannot do any magic at all. And then in the world, magic is kind of, a rare thing. Does it happen or not? People wouldn't believe it necessarily until they're face to face with it. Game of Thrones is a mature book, so this would be my highest rating. So there's a lot of, swear words, kind of dirty, just kind of, there's sexual scenes talked about. So, you'd have to think twice. A 15, 16-year-old, do you want him to read it? I would probably say yes personally, but again, you should really kind of go with mature, much like the series itself on TV. Is the series finished? Here's the big no, okay, the big negative. Game of Thrones is not finished, and it did seem like it's taking forever for the series to finish. The show will finish much before the books will, and so that can be pretty frustrating, the length of time and the massive delay. Again, I started reading the first one 15 years or something like that when it very first came out. Let's see, 1996 this book came out, and the goddamn series were 20 years in, and it's not finished. There's going to be 7 or 8 books, but still, it's pretty annoying that it is not finished. So what flaws does it have? There's a hell of a lot of characters, complicated backstories and stuff like that. Some people have a hard time kind of keeping track of that. They're even providing a little glossary so you can try, but still, that can be rough. If you have a particular favorite character, you may get frustrated that it doesn't appear that much, and even some of the later books, it's even a worse situation. So if you love a character and the point of view changes every chapter, and then there's 8 other characters they talk about, you can only get a fifth of the book or less is devoted to your character. That can be frustrating. Second and third books I didn't think were quite as good as the first. They could have been trimmed up a little bit, edited a little bit. It felt like he was rambling a little bit. I also felt like he kind of created such a complex world he wasn't going to be able to wrap it up. Maybe he can. Maybe the show is going to help him do that. So we'll see. I certainly want to give him the benefit of the doubt with that. And again, it is a long lag time. If you like the closure and you like knowing what's going on, waiting those years and years and years is pretty frustrating. My overall impression, though, incredibly well written. Basically sets the standard for new fantasy. I mean, this is the Lord of the Rings of our time. Broad, sweeping story, super real characters. Seems like he kind of captures the human condition and the way people move and act. There's gripping action in there. It's fantasy written for the adult, right? So there's a lot of young adult fantasy, but this is, if you're an adult and you love fantasy, I don't really see how you're not going to like this. And if the other books are able to match the first 3, then this will probably be the best series ever. So what do I give this? Well, unfortunately, I got to give it a freaking incomplete because he's not done. So please finish the book, finish the series, so that we can actually give it an accurate rating. As of these first 3 books, I would give it a 96, which would rank it the highest of any fantasy series I have reviewed. But alas, it is not complete. So it is the highest incomplete, with Name of the Wind coming in second. But it is not complete, and that is definitely a negative. Okay, so that's my overall score. If you want to check out other reviews, be sure to check out Tim Henriques, or keep watching this YouTube channel. And if you think I'm an idiot or I don't know what I'm talking about, feel free to post in the comments, and then I'll tell you why you're wrong.